Every one of us has a movie playing in our head, a highlight reel of the man we're supposed to be. You're driving the truck, you're living in the house, and the stress is gone. But there's a dangerous gap between that movie and your real life. Most guys don't just watch the movie, they start living it, spending the money from a future that hasn't arrived yet. And that is exactly where the train wreck begins. Today, we're ending the fantasy tax. I'm going to show you how to stop paying for a future you haven't built yet and how to start separating imaginary money from the real cash in your account. We aren't here to kill your dreams. We're here to make sure that they're anchored to a foundation that can actually support the weight. So stop living for a trailer that hasn't been filmed yet and start owning the reality you're standing in. Pull up a chair. Let's separate hope from the plan. Welcome to The Useful Man, a channel about learning, growing, and staying useful in a world that gets stranger by the day. These are the field notes of life. Not a fantasy life, not a privileged life, and not an influencer life, just real life. In my life, I carry scars, deep scars you can't see. Earn the hard way. That's why I made this channel. Maybe you have no one and nowhere to turn to. Maybe we can find the answers here together. Every one of us has a movie playing in our head, a highlight reel of who we're supposed to be. If you're breathing, you've probably got 3 or 4 of them running on a loop. For me, one of them comes from that 1999 movie, The Matrix. You remember that kid bending the spoons? He was trying to teach Neo that thing we're looking at usually isn't the thing we need to understand. It's our own perception getting in the way. Now, I generally don't take life advice from a kid who isn't old enough to drive, but that scene stuck. It forced me to realize that most of the financial wreckage people create doesn't start in their wallet, it starts in their head with a perception that is flat out wrong. The more I chewed on that, the more I realized most financial stress doesn't start in your wallet, it starts in your head. In that mental movie, there's a future version of you who's got it figured out. He's got the house, the one with enough garage space that you don't have to perform advanced geometry just to park the truck. He's got the rig that starts without sounding like 2 skeletons wrestling in a washing machine. He takes the vacation without sweating the lunch tab. He sleeps through the night because the bills aren't sitting on the edge of the bed poking him in the forehead at 2 a.m. Let me be crystal clear. There is nothing wrong with that movie. Dreams matter. Goals matter. A man without a destination ends up wherever the current drags him, and that rarely ends well. Look, wanting more is not a flaw. Ambition is not a problem. For a lot of guys, that picture of a better future is the only thing keeping them moving when quitting feels a lot easier. I'm not here to take your dream away. I'm here to show you where you're getting sideways. The problem isn't the dream, it's what happens when you start living in the dream before it's actually real. The human brain is a strange little critter. Picture something clearly and emotionally enough, and your brain starts acting like you've already got it. You mentally move into the house, you mentally start driving that truck, you mentally start spending the income. You're emotionally moving in tomorrow before you finish paying for today. And that's where it gets dangerous. Your spending starts taking orders from the movie instead of reality. That's the trap, not the dream. You start making decisions based on the life you're planning to have instead of the life you actually are living. You're standing in your real kitchen, staring at real bills and working with real numbers. But financially, you're already spending money from a future that hasn't arrived. And brother, that's where most train wrecks begin. A useful man learns to do two things at once. Keep his eyes on the dream and his boots planted in reality. They are not enemies. They need each other. The dream tells you where you're going. Reality tells you where you're standing. Lose track of either one of them, and you'll spend your whole life wandering in circles, wondering why the map quit working. Let's talk about how this shows up in real life. It's sneaky. Nobody wakes up on Tuesday, pours a coffee, and thinks, I'll spend money I don't have. Nobody does that. It starts with a story, a perfectly reasonable story you tell yourself. The raise is coming this spring. The bonus hits at Christmas. I'll pick up some overtime. That promotion, it's basically mine. Here's the tricky part. Some of those things probably will happen. That's why it's a trap. It's built on possibilities. But somewhere along the line, you start treating that future money like a maybe and stop treating it like it's a deposit. The raise becomes a down payment, the bonus becomes a vacation, and the overtime becomes a truck note. Before the cash arrives, it's already gone. You're writing checks against a future that doesn't exist yet. And brother, that's where things get Western. You're dragging pieces of tomorrow into today, a little bit at a time. Nothing looks reckless in isolation, and that's the trick. Every purchase is defensible. Every payment makes sense on its own. The problem isn't one decision, it's the pile. 100 reasonable decisions can create one hell of an unreasonable outcome. Underneath it all sits a piece of math that doesn't care about your hopes or your optimism. Future income is a maybe. The payment is a certainty. That truck note is going to show up every month like the tax collector with a clipboard. It doesn't care if the raise hit or not, if the bonus got cut, if the business slowed down. The payment always gets a vote. You've traded something that might happen for something that absolutely will. A useful man learns to separate real money from imaginary money. Real money is sitting in the account. Imaginary money is still floating around in your head. One buys things, the other doesn't. If the cash hasn't arrived, it is not yours. Hope is a good thing. Goals are a good thing. But hope is not a deposit. And optimism does not clear the bank. Let's talk about hope. I don't want anyone walking out of here thinking that hope is the enemy. It is not. Hope is what gets a man back on his feet after life knocks him flat. It's what keeps you moving when the numbers are ugly and the road looks too long. I've survived rough patches on hope alone, and most people have. But you've got to stop asking hope to do a job it was never hired to do. Hope has a purpose, but it's got to stay in its lane. Think of it this way. Hope is a passenger. It's not the driver. Hope is there to help you read the map when the road gets dark, but it has no business grabbing the steering wheel. The trouble starts when you fire the plan and hand the steering wheel over to optimism. When I think it'll probably work out quietly replaces, here's exactly what I'm going to do when things get squirrely. You stopped planning and started wishing. Friend, a wish is not a budget. Crossed fingers never paid a mortgage. Positive thinking never fixed the transmission. And optimism never convinced a creditor to skip a payment. Picture the guy who builds his life on the assumption that everything will go right. Every check arrives, the job stays steady, the economy behaves. He's built his entire financial plan on the belief that reality is going to follow his instructions. That's a bold strategy, but reality has never shown the slightest interest in following orders. The road always has potholes, always. The transmission quits, the overtime disappears, and the water heater decides that it's reached the end of its spiritual journey. Eventually, Life reaches into the toolbox and finds a wrench to throw. And when that happens, a plan built entirely on hope folds up like a lawn chair at a sumo match. That plan didn't fail because hope was bad. It failed because hope wasn't designed to carry that kind of weight. That's the danger, hoping instead of planning. Write this on the inside of your skull. Hope rides alongside a plan, never in place of one. You build the defense for when things go sideways, then you hope they don't. Plan for a pothole, hope for a smooth road. Plan for rain, hope for sun. Do both. A man who does both can take a punch and stay standing. A man running on hope alone is one bad Tuesday away from looking like a jar of pennies as an investment portfolio. A useful man hopes for the best but prepares for the worst. That's not pessimism, that's not negativity, that's experience. It's understanding that life will take a swing at you. And sometimes the whole crew decides to jump in. When that happens, you better have a plan because a wish won't save you. We're moving into the part that doesn't just mess with your wallet, it messes with your head. This might be the most important part of this conversation. Money problems aren't just math problems, they're expectation problems. Remember that movie in your head? The version of you living in that perfect house, driving the perfect truck, and somehow dodging every wrench life throws? Once you live in that movie too long, you start comparing it to your real life. That's a fight reality wins every single time. How could it not? You're comparing an unfinished house to a finished blueprint. You're comparing your gritty behind-the-scenes footage to a movie trailer that hasn't even been filmed yet. I call it the expectation gap, the distance between where you think you should be and where you actually are. It's a miserable place to live. When that gap gets wide enough, nothing feels like progress. You get a raise? Not enough. You paid off your debt? Not enough. You accomplish something that would have made you proud 5 years ago and your brain shrugs and says, yeah, but look how far you still gotta go. That's a hell of a way to live. And social media just pours gasoline on that fire. You open your phone and there's a guy you went to school with standing in front of a house that looks like a country music video. Someone else is posting a vacation shots of a new truck. Before you know it, that voice starts chirping, maybe I'm behind, maybe they figured it out and I didn't. Here's the reality. You don't know what that house cost him. You don't see the monthly pressure, the credit card interest, the arguments at 2 a.m. You're comparing your behind the scenes to his highlight reel and your brain is filling in the blanks with lies. That's how comparison moves in and brings in its friends, envy, pride, and greed. Pretty soon, you're miserable in a life that might actually be going just fine. The cruelest part is that misery is self-inflicted. You've hung a finish line out in the front of yourself, and that's not even real, and you're beating yourself up for not crossing it. Let me say it clearly. You aren't losing a race. You're racing a guy who doesn't exist. That future version of you in your head, he's imaginary. He doesn't have bad days, vet bills, or broken appliances. Of course, he looks better than you. He doesn't have to live in reality. You do. And here's the truth that's hard to swallow. Success isn't measured by what you do compared to what somebody else does. It's measured by what you do compared to what you're capable of. Stop chasing the ghost of other people's success and start paying attention to your own capacity. That's why a useful man measures progress differently. He doesn't compare himself to fantasy, he compares himself to where he started. Seriously, take inventory. Look at the mistakes you've survived, the problems that you've solved, and the responsibilities you're carrying now that would have scared the hell out of a younger version of you. You've come a lot farther than you give yourself credit for. The movie in your head only shows what's unfinished. Reality shows you how far you've already climbed. Now listen, I'm not telling you to stop dreaming. I'd be a hypocrite if I did. That movie in your head, I've got one too, and it's dragged me through some of the ugliest stretches when quitting would have been easier. Ambition isn't the problem. A man without it is just drifting, and the currents have a nasty habit of dumping you wherever they never intended to go. Keep the vision. Don't let anyone talk you out of it, but change this one thing. Stop spending money like you've already arrived. That's the whole sermon. Keep your eyes on the destination, but stop acting like you're standing there while you're still driving towards it. Ambition and fantasy wear the same outfit, and from a distance they look impossible to tell apart. But remember, one of them builds your future, the other one just sends you the bill. And here is the easiest way to tell the difference. Ambition builds, fantasy buys. Ambition says, here's where I'm going, and here's the plan. Fantasy says, I want it now, and the future me can figure out the details. Ambition lays bricks. Fantasy hangs curtains in a house that doesn't exist. Ambition saves for the truck. Fantasy finances it and prays for that life cooperates. Ambition works quietly. Fantasy chases the reward before the work. One creates a foundation, the other creates a pavement. And things built without foundations eventually have to introduce themselves to gravity. I know that's not the exciting answer. Everyone wants some version of the publisher's clearinghouse moment, the lucky break that solves everything overnight. But most of those stories are hogwash. Real success is boring. It's built one paycheck, one decision, one ordinary Tuesday at a time. Nobody makes movies about that part because it isn't glamorous. But that's how anything worthwhile gets built. Brick by brick, choice by choice. Then one day, something funny happens. You look around and the things you used to dream about are actually sitting there. Not because you got lucky, and not because you bought them on credit, because you built them. The movie became a reality while you were busy doing the work. You didn't leap to the dream, you built it. And the things that you build stay standing a hell of a lot longer than the things that you borrow. That's the lesson life teaches. The smart ones just learn it before the invoices arrive. So what does a regular guy actually do with all this? Forget the millionaire gurus and the rented Lamborghinis. I'm talking about a regular guy with a regular paycheck. How do you turn a dream into a foundation instead of another monthly payment? It starts with one move, one habit, a decision that sounds almost too boring to matter, yet changes everything. You pay yourself first. Not the bank, not the credit cards, not the truck note or the subscription or the others reaching into your wallet. You first. Before life gets a vote, before the bills hold their committee meetings, before reality shows up with another invoice, you take a piece off the top and keep it. You create a margin. You create a little daylight between you and the next bad Tuesday, because Tuesday always shows up carrying nonsense. I'm not asking you to live like a monk on rice cakes and regret. I'm talking about 10%, 10 cents out of every dollar. That's it, a dime. You keep that piece before anyone else gets a vote. That simple habit is the pivot point. The day you start paying yourself first is the day you stop financing the dream and start building it. That's exactly where we're headed next. Welcome to the 10% Club. Thanks for spending some useful time with me. Remember, every problem in life gets worse when you're tired, broke, hungry, or angry. Try not to be all four at once, and hit the like button for me while your decision-making abilities are still functioning. I'll catch you on the next one.